Sometimes the deepest heartbreak doesn't begin with a shout. It begins with a sentence spoken so quietly that no one else notices, except the person whose world it destroys. My name is Michael Carter. I'm 58 years old, born and raised in Ohio, and for the last 36 years I've worked as a maintenance supervisor for the city's public transportation department. It isn't glamorous work. My hands smell like machine oil more often than soap. My knees ache whenever rain is coming. My back reminds me every morning that I spent half my life crawling beneath buses so strangers could get to work on time. None of that ever bothered me, because every hour I worked, every overtime shift I accepted, every birthday I missed because someone had to fix a broken engine, all pointed toward one destination: my son. His name is Ethan Carter, and today was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. His high school graduation. The morning air carried that familiar scent of freshly cut grass mixed with sunscreen and cheap coffee. Families poured through the front gates of Lincoln Heights High School carrying bouquets wrapped in colorful paper. Mothers adjusted dresses. Fathers straightened ties. Grandparents struggled with folding chairs and cameras that looked older than some of the graduates. Laughter floated across the football field. The marching band warmed up somewhere behind the bleachers, each trumpet note slightly out of tune before settling into harmony. I stood outside the entrance for a moment, smoothing the wrinkles from the navy blue suit I'd bought nearly 12 years earlier for my wife's funeral. It still fit, mostly. The sleeves were a little short now. The fabric had faded around the elbows, but it was the nicest thing I owned. I brushed an invisible speck of dust from the lapel and smiled to myself. "You'd be proud of him, Emily," I whispered. My wife never lived long enough to see Ethan become a teenager. Cancer doesn't negotiate. It simply arrives, takes what it wants, and leaves the rest of you to figure out how to breathe again. For 14 years, that's exactly what I'd been doing. Breathing, working, raising our son. I checked my watch. 10 minutes before the ceremony. Perfect. I spotted Ethan near the gymnasium wearing his graduation gown, laughing with 3 friends. He looked taller than I remembered, though I'd seen him at breakfast just 4 hours earlier. Funny how milestones do that. They make children suddenly look like strangers who borrowed the faces of the little boys you once carried on your shoulders. He saw me. His smile appeared for only a second. Then something changed. He excused himself from his friends and walked toward me, adjusting the blue tassel hanging beside his face. "Hey, Dad." "Hey, kid." I pulled him into a hug. For a brief moment, he hugged me back. Then he gently stepped away. His eyes kept drifting toward the rows of chairs already filling with parents. There was a nervousness about him I couldn't quite place. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah, you don't look okay." He forced a small laugh. "I'm fine. I've been a father long enough to know that 'I'm fine' usually means exactly the opposite." I waited. Eventually, he rubbed the back of his neck the same way he always had whenever he struggled to say something difficult. "Dad." His voice almost disappeared beneath the sound of cheering from the football field. "Yeah." He looked past me instead of into my eyes. When they opened the seating, he paused. "Could you, maybe not sit in the front row?" The words landed softly. Too softly, like snow covering something already dead. I blinked. "I'm sorry, the front row." His voice remained careful. "Maybe, just sit farther back." For a second I honestly thought I'd misunderstood him. "What do you mean?" "I just think." He swallowed. "It would be better." Better. Such a harmless word. Such a devastating one. I searched his face for a smile. For a joke. For anything that would tell me this conversation wasn't real. There was nothing. Only discomfort. Only hesitation. Only a son who suddenly couldn't look his father in the eye. Around us, families laughed as they hurried toward the best seats. A little girl handed her father a bouquet almost bigger than she was. Someone nearby shouted, "Save us the front row." Everyone seemed to know exactly where they belonged. Except me. I managed a smile that didn't feel like mine. "Oh," I cleared my throat. "Sure, if that's what you want." Ethan nodded quickly. "Thanks, Dad." Then, before I could ask another question, he turned and hurried back toward the other graduates, leaving me standing alone beneath the stadium entrance, watching my own son walk away. And for the first time in 14 years, I wondered if I'd spent my whole life teaching him to be proud of himself, only to become the one person he was ashamed to be seen with. People like to believe that heartbreak arrives all at once. The truth is, it usually settles into your chest one quiet moment at a time. until you suddenly realize you can no longer remember what it felt like to breathe without hope. I stood there for several seconds after Ethan disappeared into the crowd. Parents brushed past me, smiling, carrying flowers and balloons. No one noticed the man standing alone beside the entrance, still staring at the place where his son had walked away. Eventually, I forced my feet to move. The volunteers directed families toward the football field where hundreds of white folding chairs had been arranged in neat rows facing the graduation stage. The front section was already filling with excited parents waving at their children. For a moment, I caught myself drifting toward the first row out of habit. Then Ethan's words echoed inside my head. "Please don't sit in the front row." I stopped. Without thinking, I turned and walked toward the back instead. Each row I passed felt strangely symbolic. First row, second, third, fourth. By the time I reached the last section, I realized I had placed nearly 50 yards between myself and the stage where my son would receive his diploma. Maybe that's where I belong. I chose a seat near the aisle, far enough back that no camera would accidentally focus on me. The chair wobbled slightly as I sat down. I folded my hands together, pretending I had chosen this spot because it offered a better view. Funny how quickly pride learns to disguise itself. Around me, conversations floated through the warm June air. My daughter already committed to Stanford. My son's heading to Duke. We're flying to Europe next week to celebrate. People spoke with the effortless confidence of families who had never counted grocery money before payday. I smiled politely whenever someone glanced my way, though no one actually tried to start a conversation. My suit probably explained enough. A little boy nearby tugged on his father's expensive jacket. "Dad, can we sit closer?" His father laughed. "Of course, your sister needs to see us cheering." The two of them hurried toward the front rows. I watched them disappear. Then I looked down at my own hands. The cracks around my knuckles hadn't completely healed from replacing a seized transmission 2 weeks earlier. Years of grease had stained the lines in my skin so deeply that no amount of scrubbing ever seemed to remove them. Emily used to joke that my hands looked older than the rest of me. "They're honest hands," she'd say while rubbing lotion into the rough skin before bed. I married those hands because they always came home. I smiled without realizing it. God, I missed her. She would have known exactly what to say today. She always understood Ethan better than I did. Maybe she would have explained why an 18-year-old suddenly didn't want his father sitting where everyone could see him. Maybe she would have told me not to take it personally. But she wasn't here, and I was left alone with my own imagination. The dangerous thing about silence is that it gives fear room to speak. As I waited for the ceremony to begin, memories surfaced one after another. 3 months ago, Ethan had asked me not to pick him up after baseball practice anymore. "I'll get a ride." A few weeks later, he stopped inviting his friends over to the house. "They're busy." When the school hosted senior family night, he insisted there wasn't much point in me coming. "It'll just be boring." At the time, each excuse had seemed reasonable. Teenagers become independent. That's what everyone says. But sitting there alone in the last rows, those moments suddenly connected like pieces of a puzzle I'll never understand. Had it been happening to me? Had I simply refused to see it? I remembered offering to teach him how to change the oil in his first car. He'd smiled politely. "Maybe another time." That another time never came. I remembered asking if he wanted to grab burgers after one of his college acceptance lectures. He said he already had plans. I remembered standing outside his bedroom one evening after hearing him laughing with friends online. The moment I knocked, the room became quiet. Back then, I told myself I was imagining things. Parents overthink everything, didn't they? A burst of applause pulled me back to the present. The graduates were beginning to line up near the tunnel leading onto the field. Families stood, cameras raised high. I spotted Ethan for only a second among the sea of blue gowns. He wasn't looking toward the back. He was searching the front rows, almost as if he wanted to make sure that I had listened. There are sacrifices children remember, and then there are sacrifices they never see at all. The hardest ones are usually made in silence, long before anyone thinks to say thank you. As the seats around me continued to fill, my eyes remained fixed on the stage, but my mind wandered somewhere 14 years into the past. The day Emily died. I still remember walking out of St. Mary's Hospital with a 6-year-old boy asleep against my shoulder. He kept asking when Mommy was coming home. I kept telling him she wasn't hurting anymore. Neither answer felt true. That night, after Ethan finally fell asleep, I sat alone at the kitchen table surrounded by unpaid medical bills, a half-empty coffee mug, and the terrible realization that there was no one left to share the weight with. It was just me, a father who had no idea how to braid hair for school picture day, pack healthy lunches, or comfort a little boy who cried himself to sleep because he couldn't remember the sound of his mother's voice. I promised Emily something before she closed her eyes for the last time. I'll make sure he has every opportunity. At 20 years old, promises sound romantic. At 44, they become responsibilities. Every decision afterward revolved around one question. Would this help Ethan? When overtime became available, I took it. When coworkers complained about working weekends, I volunteered. Christmas mornings often began after 12-hour night shifts. Birthdays were celebrated a day late because broken buses didn't care about family calendars. Sometimes I'd arrive home after midnight, quietly wash the grease from my arms, then wake Ethan in time for school before collapsing on the couch for 2 hours of sleep. I never thought of it as sacrifice. It was simply fatherhood. Money was always tight. There were months when I skipped replacing my work boots because Ethan needed new cleats for baseball. The old boots leaked every time it rained. I stuffed newspaper inside them during lunch breaks. One winter, the heater in my truck stopped working. Repairing it would have cost nearly $800. That same week, Ethan's guidance counselor called. There was an educational trip to Washington, D.C. He wanted to go. The cost was almost exactly the same. I drove through an entire Ohio winter with frozen fingers. Ethan stood beneath the Lincoln Memorial smiling in every picture. I'd make the same choice again, without hesitation. When colleges started sending acceptance letters, another problem appeared. Tuition. Even with scholarships, there were still expenses. Books, housing, transportation, application fees. The numbers on those papers looked impossible. So I quietly sold the last valuable thing Emily had ever given me. My wedding ring. Not because I wanted to, because metal sitting in a drawer couldn't build my son's future. The jeweler asked if I was sure. I lied. Don't wear jewelry anymore. He handed me a check. I deposited it before I had time to change my mind. Ethan never knew. There was no reason he should. Children shouldn't carry the weight of their parents' sacrifices. They're supposed to carry hope instead. A loud burst of laughter brought me back to the present. Several rows ahead, a family was taking pictures together. Grandparents, parents, brothers, sisters. Everyone gathered around a smiling graduate. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. The wallpaper was still the same picture I'd been using for years. 8-year-old Ethan sitting on my shoulders at a county fair, both of us covered in melted ice cream. He'd laughed so hard that afternoon he could barely breathe. Back then, whenever someone asked who his hero was, he'd answer before they finished the question. My dad. Children say things like that without realizing they'll echo inside a father's heart forever. As they grow older, they stop saying them. You hope they never stop meaning them. I looked toward the front rows again. Parents waved excitedly every time they spotted their children. Some graduates smiled back. Others rolled their eyes in playful embarrassment. Normal teenage behavior. Perfectly ordinary. Then I finally found Ethan. For just a second, our eyes met across the field. I lifted my hand in a small wave. He hesitated, almost smiled. Then one of his classmates leaned over and whispered something into his ear. Ethan looked away immediately. He never waved back. I slowly lowered my hand before anyone else could notice. Maybe he hadn't seen me. Maybe he had. By then, I wasn't sure which possibility hurt more. Because for the first time since becoming his father, I found myself wondering whether all the years I spent making sure my son could stand proudly in the spotlight had quietly pushed me into the shadows instead. Nothing makes you feel smaller than believing you are the one person your child wishes would disappear. The first notes of the school orchestra drifted across the football field as the graduation ceremony officially began. The principal stepped onto the stage to warm applause. Teachers filed into their seats in black academic robes trimmed with blue and silver. The graduates followed in 2 neat lines, each carrying the same nervous excitement that comes with realizing childhood is ending one step at a time. Parents around me immediately stood. Phones filled the air. Hundreds of tiny screens searched for one familiar face. I did the same. It took me a few seconds before I spotted Ethan in the 3rd row from the front. Even from where I sat, I could recognize the way he stood, shoulders back, chin slightly raised, trying to look calmer than he actually felt. He had always done that before important moments. His first baseball game, his driver's test, college interviews. Whenever he was nervous, he pretended he wasn't. That came from his mother. I smiled despite everything. The principal welcomed everyone before beginning the usual speech about perseverance, dreams, and the future. Most people listened politely. Some didn't. Children fidgeted. Parents whispered. A baby cried somewhere behind me. Life continued as though my own had not quietly fallen apart less than 30 minutes earlier. Then something strange happened. One of the assistant principals walked across the stage carrying a clipboard. He leaned toward the principal and whispered something. The principal nodded. For just a moment, both men looked out into the audience. Not generally, specifically, toward the back, toward my section. I instinctively turned around. Maybe they were looking for someone behind me. There wasn't anyone. Only a handful of late arrivals settling into empty chairs. A few seconds later, the assistant principal spoke to another staff member. That teacher also glanced toward the rear seating area. Again, toward me. I frowned. Perhaps they were making sure every section had enough room. It was probably nothing. I tried to focus on the ceremony again. One graduate after another was recognized for academic honors, scholarships, community service, athletic achievements. Families erupted into cheers whenever they heard a familiar name. Every parent in front of me seemed to know exactly when to clap, exactly when to stand, exactly when to celebrate. I simply waited for Ethan's turn. My phone rested quietly in my lap. The camera app was already open. I had practiced recording videos enough times to know exactly where to press. I wanted to capture the moment. Maybe someday, years from now, Ethan would have children of his own. Maybe we'd watch this video together and laugh about how nervous he looked. That thought almost made me forget the conversation outside the stadium. Almost. Then another unusual thing caught my attention. A woman wearing an event staff badge walked slowly along the aisle. She wasn't checking tickets. She wasn't helping guests. Instead, she seemed to be studying the audience. When she reached my row, our eyes briefly met. She smiled politely, then looked down at a sheet of paper, then back at me, as though confirming something. Before I could ask if there was a problem, she continued walking. A strange feeling settled over me. Not fear, more like confusion. Had I parked somewhere I shouldn't have? Was there an emergency? Did someone need to speak with me? I glanced toward the exit just in case. Everything appeared perfectly normal. The ceremony continued. Yet every few minutes, another member of the faculty seemed to glance in my direction. Not long enough to seem obvious, just long enough for me to notice. Finally, I convinced myself I was imagining it. After all, embarrassed people often believe everyone is looking at them. Maybe guilt creates its own audience. Maybe shame does the same. I lowered my eyes and adjusted the sleeves of my old suit, suddenly aware of every wrinkle in the fabric. The polished shoes in the front rows, the designer handbags, the expensive watches catching the afternoon sunlight. Then there was me, a maintenance supervisor with cracked hands, worn leather shoes, and a jacket old enough to remember another lifetime. Perhaps Ethan had been right. Perhaps I didn't belong in the front row after all. Because sitting back here, I could almost pretend no one noticed the difference between me and the kind of fathers I believed my son wished he had. There are moments when life grows so quiet that even your own heartbeat sounds too loud. Sitting in that last row, I had no idea I was only minutes away from one of those moments. The ceremony moved forward with the steady rhythm every graduation seems to follow. Names, applause, diplomas, photographs. The principal congratulated the honor students first. Scholarships were announced, academic awards were handed out, and proud families erupted into cheers every few minutes. I clapped for every student. Some were heading to Ivy League universities. Others had enlisted in the military. Some planned to stay close to home. Each young face carried the same mixture of excitement and uncertainty that comes with stepping into adulthood. I found myself wondering if Ethan felt the same, or if he was still worried about whether I had stayed exactly where he'd asked me to sit. When they finally reached the section for his class, I straightened in my chair. My phone was already recording. Ethan Carter. The announcer's voice echoed across the stadium. For a brief second, nothing else existed. I watched my son walk confidently across the stage. His shoulders were square. His smile was small but genuine. The principal shook his hand. A blue diploma cover changed hands. The audience applauded. I applauded harder than anyone around me. That's my boy, I whispered to myself. The words caught in my throat. Before I realized it, tears had begun gathering in my eyes. Not because he had graduated, because he had made it. Against every odd stacked against us. Against every bill, every sleepless night, every extra shift, every lonely Christmas after Emily was gone. He had made it. For a few beautiful seconds, none of the pain from earlier mattered anymore. This was his day. That was enough. The graduates returned to their seats, and I reached into my pocket for a handkerchief Emily had embroidered with my initials years before we were married. The stitching had faded. The memories hadn't. I wiped my eyes before anyone nearby noticed. The principal returned to the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, he began with a smile. Before we conclude today's ceremony, there is one final matter. The audience settled again. I assumed it would be another scholarship announcement. Perhaps one last thank you to the faculty. Instead, the principal closed the folder resting on the podium. He looked toward the teachers seated behind him. Several of them exchanged quiet smiles. The assistant principal gave a subtle nod. For reasons I couldn't explain, a strange tension spread through the stadium. Even the graduates seemed confused. The principal adjusted the microphone. There are many people who help our students reach this day. He paused. Teachers. Another pause. Counselors. Then, and families. A wave of applause swept across the audience. I clapped politely along with everyone else. We often celebrate the graduates, he continued, and rightly so. But occasionally we meet someone whose quiet sacrifices deserve to be recognized as well. My attention sharpened. That was an unusual thing to include in a graduation ceremony. Several parents around me smiled proudly at one another. A mother in front of me squeezed her husband's hand. I assumed the principal was about to recognize all parents collectively. Instead, he looked down at a single sheet of paper. Not a stack, just one page. He unfolded it carefully. The football field became strangely silent. Even the breeze seemed to stop. I noticed several teachers turning toward the audience instead of the graduates. The event staff standing near the sidelines suddenly became very still. The principal smiled. I would like to invite one very special parent to join us on stage. My first thought was that someone's child had secretly arranged a surprise. Maybe a military veteran, maybe a foster parent, maybe someone celebrating a remarkable achievement. I looked around, curious to see who it would be. Then the principal lifted his eyes from the paper. His gaze settled directly on the last section of chairs. On my section. For one impossible second, it felt as though he was looking straight at me. I immediately glanced over my shoulder. No one was standing behind me. No one seemed ready to move. Surely, I told myself, he couldn't possibly mean me. Then the principal leaned closer to the microphone, took one slow breath, and spoke a name that made the entire world around me disappear. Would Mr. Michael Carter please come to the stage? For a moment, I honestly believed there had been a mistake. The sound of my own name echoed across the football field, then dissolved into a silence so complete I could hear the flag snapping gently above the stadium. Mr. Michael Carter, would you please come to the stage? I looked to my left, then to my right. Surely there had to be another Michael Carter sitting somewhere nearby. No one moved. A woman in the row ahead turned around and smiled at me. I think he means you. I blinked. I'm sorry. The principal. She pointed toward the stage. He's calling your name. My heart began pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. There had to be some misunderstanding. Maybe Ethan had forgotten something. Maybe there was paperwork. Maybe they needed a parent to sign a document before the ceremony ended. Yes, that had to be it. I slowly stood, painfully aware that thousands of eyes were now following me. The event staff member I'd noticed earlier appeared beside my chair with a warm smile. Mr. Carter? I nodded. This way, please. She didn't sound concerned. She sounded excited. As we started walking down the aisle, conversations rippled through the audience. Who's that? I don't know. Is he a teacher? Maybe a veteran. Whispers followed every step I took. I wanted to disappear. My old shoes suddenly felt impossibly loud against the concrete walkway. Every crease in my worn suit seemed magnified beneath the afternoon sun. Halfway to the stage, I looked toward Ethan. He wasn't staring at the principal. He wasn't looking at his classmates. He was looking directly at me. Our eyes met. This time, he didn't look away. Instead, I noticed something I hadn't seen all day. His eyes were shining, not with embarrassment, with tears. I frowned, completely confused. Before I could make sense of it, I reached the stairs leading onto the stage. The principal walked forward before I even climbed the final step. He extended both hands. "Mr. Carter." I shook his hand automatically. "Thank you for coming." I'm sorry," I stammered. "I think there must be some mistake." His smile widened. "There isn't." He gently placed a hand on my shoulder. "Please stand beside me." I obeyed, though my legs barely felt steady. From the stage, the entire stadium looked different. Rows upon rows of families stretched toward the horizon. Hundreds of faces, hundreds of cameras, hundreds of strangers, every one of them looking at me. The maintenance supervisor from Ohio, who had spent most of his life trying not to draw attention. The principal returned to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "every graduating class leaves behind stories that inspire us." He paused. "But once in a great while, we learn a story that reminds us what love actually looks like." I felt my stomach tighten. "What story?" He unfolded the single sheet of paper once more. "A few months ago," he continued, "our administration received a confidential nomination from one of today's graduates." I turned instinctively toward Ethan. He was already watching me. The nomination was not for a student. Another pause. It was for a father. The audience became perfectly still. The principal looked down at the page. In the nomination, this student wrote. He stopped speaking. His voice softened. "My dad thinks he only fixes buses." A quiet chuckle spread through the audience. The principal continued reading. "But every broken thing he ever repaired paid for my future." My breath caught. No, it couldn't be. He worked nights so I could sleep. He skipped meals so I never had to. He sold things he loved so I could chase dreams he never had the chance to pursue. I felt the blood drain from my face. Only one person could know those words. Only one. The principal looked up from the page. "He believes I asked him to sit in the back today because I'm ashamed of him." The stadium fell completely silent. I slowly turned toward Ethan. Tears were running freely down his face now. The principal's next sentence shattered every painful assumption I had carried with me since that morning. "The truth is, I asked him to stay away from the front because I wanted him to walk to this stage without suspecting that today, he is the one we came here to honor." Some truths arrive too late to prevent the pain, but they arrived just in time to heal it. I stood frozen beside the principal, unable to move, unable to speak. Every word he had just read echoed through my mind. He worked nights so I could sleep. He skipped meals so I never had to. He sold things he loved. I had never told Ethan about the wedding ring. Not once. I never intended to. So how could he know? As though answering the question forming inside my head, the principal smiled gently. Ethan later explained that he discovered the receipt from the jeweler while helping organize old family documents after applying for college. A quiet murmur spread through the audience. He told us he finally understood why his father no longer wore his wedding band. I instinctively looked down at my bare left hand. For years, I'd grown used to seeing that empty finger. I had convinced myself no one else noticed. Apparently, my son had. The principal continued. When Ethan asked his father not to sit in the front row today, it wasn't because he was ashamed. He turned toward the graduates. It was because he wanted this recognition to remain a complete surprise. Then he faced the audience once more. He knew that if his father sat close enough to see the preparations, he would immediately suspect something. Soft laughter rolled through the stadium. I finally looked at Ethan again. He was crying openly now. No embarrassment, no hesitation, just tears. The kind that come from carrying something important for a very long time. The principal folded the letter carefully. "What you're about to hear next," he said, "are Ethan's own words." He cleared his throat before reading. "When I was little, I thought my dad fixed buses." The audience smiled. "When I got older, I realized he was actually fixing my future one paycheck at a time." Silence. He never complained when he came home exhausted. He never told me how scared he was after Mom died. He never let me see how many dreams he quietly traded for mine. I covered my mouth with my trembling hand. The tears I'd been fighting all afternoon finally won. The principal's own voice began to shake. "People think heroes wear uniforms, own companies, or become famous." He paused. "Mine comes home smelling like engine oil." A collective breath swept through the crowd. He taught me that dignity isn't measured by the softness of your hands, but by what those hands are willing to carry for someone else. Several teachers were wiping away tears. Parents held one another's hands. Even many of the graduates had lowered their heads. The principal looked directly at me. "Dad," his voice softened almost to a whisper. "If I asked you to stay away from the front today, it was only because I wanted every single person here to look at you before they looked at me. I could barely breathe. Everything I become started with everything you gave up." The principal lowered the paper. "For that reason, Ethan requested permission from the school board to dedicate today's ceremony to the person who made his education possible." He smiled, and they unanimously agreed. At that exact moment, every graduate on the football field rose to their feet, one by one, then every teacher, then every member of the faculty, finally, the parents. An entire stadium stood together. The applause began quietly, then grew louder and louder, until it rolled across the field like thunder. I had never experienced anything like it. People weren't applauding because I was extraordinary. They were applauding because they recognized something ordinary that often goes unnoticed. A father simply trying to keep a promise. Through blurred vision, I searched for Ethan. He stepped away from his classmates, still wearing his graduation gown, still holding his diploma. Then, without caring that thousands of people were watching, he walked straight across the stage toward me. When he reached me, he didn't say a single word. He simply wrapped both arms around me and hugged me harder than he had since he was a little boy. There is something extraordinary about being seen by the person whose opinion matters most. Not because it changes who you are, but because it reminds you that perhaps you were never as invisible as you believed. I held Ethan as the applause continued around us. Neither of us spoke. We didn't have to. Some emotions are simply too large for words. When we finally stepped apart, he wiped his face with the sleeve of his graduation gown and laughed through his tears. "I'm sorry, Dad." His voice cracked. "I had to lie to you." I managed to smile despite the tears streaming down my own face. "I spent the whole day thinking you were ashamed of me." His expression collapsed. "No." He shook his head so hard that his graduation cap nearly slipped off. "Oh, Dad, no." He grabbed both of my hands. "I hated making you think that." "I know, but it worked." A few people in the audience laughed softly. Ethan smiled through his tears. I couldn't risk ruining the surprise. The principal stepped back, giving us space while the applause slowly faded. Ethan turned toward the microphone. Can I say something?" The principal nodded immediately. "The stage is yours." Ethan took a slow breath before facing the audience. "I've spent weeks trying to figure out how to thank my dad." He glanced at me before continuing. "But every speech I wrote sounded too small." A gentle silence settled over the stadium. "So today, I decided to let everyone meet the man I've always known." He smiled. "When I was little, my friends thought their dads were superheroes. They talked about businessmen, doctors, lawyers, police officers. I used to tell them my dad fixed buses." A few people chuckled. I didn't realize until I got older that what he was really fixing was every obstacle standing between me and my future. He paused. My dad never missed a parent-teacher conference, even after working all night. He never forgot my birthday, even when he forgot to celebrate his own. He always made sure I had what I needed. I never stopped to ask whether he did. I lowered my head. Every sentence felt heavier than the last. "When Mom died," Ethan continued quietly, "I thought I was the one who lost everything." His eyes found mine again. I never realized my dad lost the love of his life, and still somehow found enough strength to become both parents. Across the audience, dozens of people wiped away tears. I used to wonder why Dad always looked tired. He laughed softly. I blamed his job. It took me years to understand. It wasn't the buses. It was the weight he carried alone. He reached into the pocket of his graduation gown. "I brought something today." Slowly, he removed a small velvet box. My heart stopped. I found out where Dad sold Mom's wedding ring. The entire stadium watched in silence. The jeweler remembered him. He also remembered why he sold it. Ethan opened the box. Inside rested the simple gold band I hadn't seen in years. The afternoon sunlight reflected gently across its worn surface. I bought it back. I stared at it, unable to breathe. I used my graduation savings. He smiled through fresh tears. I figured there wasn't a better investment. The audience erupted into applause once again. With trembling hands, Ethan lifted the ring from the box. "I know it can't replace Mom." His voice nearly disappeared. "And I know you'll always miss her." He carefully placed the ring into my palm. "But maybe," he swallowed hard, "it's time our family had this piece of her back." I closed my fingers around the gold band. It felt warm, almost impossibly familiar. For one brief moment, I could almost hear Emily laughing somewhere beyond the applause, as though she had been watching the entire ceremony, waiting for the exact moment our broken little family finally became whole again. People often ask what the greatest moment of my life was. Was it my wedding day? The day Ethan was born? Or the day he graduated? For years, I would have answered differently. Now I know the truth. The greatest moment of my life was the moment I finally understood that love given quietly is never truly invisible. The ceremony eventually came to an end. Families flooded onto the football field. Graduates laughed as they tossed their caps into the bright Ohio sky. Camera flashes sparkled everywhere. Teachers hugged students one last time before summer carried everyone in different directions. For the first time all afternoon, I wasn't standing alone. Ethan stayed beside me. Not because he felt obligated, because he wanted to. People I had never met approached us one after another. Parents shook my hand. Several fathers hugged me without saying much. One elderly woman gently touched my arm. "My husband raised our children the way you raised your son," she whispered. "He passed away 5 years ago." She smiled through tears. "Thank you for reminding me of it." I couldn't answer. I simply squeezed her hand. A young teacher walked over carrying an envelope. "Mr. Carter," she said, "every member of the faculty signed this." Inside was a handwritten card, page after page, dozens of signatures, dozens of short messages. "Thank you. Your son is remarkable. You raised an extraordinary young man. Your story inspired us." I carefully folded the card before placing it inside my jacket pocket. It joined the wedding ring resting safely there. Two treasures, one from my past, one from my present. Later that afternoon, Ethan and I finally found a quiet corner beneath an old oak tree overlooking the emptying football field. For a while, we simply sat together. No speeches, no applause, no audience, just father and son. "I'm sorry," Ethan said again. I smiled. "You've apologized enough. I really thought you'd figure it out." "I almost did." He laughed. "No, you didn't." I laughed too. He was right. I just kept thinking. I admitted quietly. "What?" "That maybe you had finally become embarrassed by me." The smile disappeared from his face. He turned toward me. "Dad," his voice was firm, "I've never been embarrassed by you." He paused. "I've been embarrassed by myself." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "There were times in high school when kids joked about jobs." He looked down at the grass. "I didn't always defend you the way I should have." The confession seemed painful. I was young. I was stupid. I thought success looked expensive. He took a deep breath. "Then I grew up." He smiled faintly, and I realized success looks exactly like the man sitting next to me. Neither of us spoke for several moments. Finally, I reached into my pocket. Slowly, I removed Emily's wedding ring. The sunlight reflected softly across the gold. "I think your mom would have been proud of you today." Ethan nodded. "I think she already was." Before leaving the school grounds, we walked back to the nearly empty stage one last time. The rows of folding chairs were already being stacked. The banners were coming down. The celebration was ending. I looked toward the back row where I'd spent most of the afternoon believing I didn't belong. Then I looked at the stage where I had stood only hours later. Life can change in the distance between two seats. As we walked toward the parking lot, Ethan slipped his arm around my shoulders the same way I had done for him when he was a little boy. "Dad, yeah, when I graduate from college." I looked over. "I want you in the front row." I smiled. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Sometimes children spend years trying to find the right words to thank their parents. Sometimes parents spend years wondering whether their sacrifices mattered. If you're fortunate enough to experience both truths in the same lifetime, hold on to them. Because one day, long after the applause fades, you may discover that the greatest legacy we leave our children isn't money, success, or possessions. It's the quiet example of showing up, even when no one seems to notice. And if love is given faithfully enough, one day, someone always does.